They had 3 fat judges. It was like, who would want to watch this show? And we always say one of the joys about MasterChef is because it didn't conform to any of those stereotypes. It kind of felt fresh and new, and also allowed us. I think everyone at the network thought it would fail. We'd be like when you finish a long relationship, like you had with Big Brother, you then go into the rebound relationship that lasts a very short period of time. I think everyone thought MasterChef would be the rebound relationship, but luckily people fell in love with it, and we ended up doing 11 amazing seasons.
When you started out, it wasn't like X Factor or whatever, where you had Mr. Nasty, Miss Sweet or whatever. You guys just went in there and did your own thing, isn't that right?
If you get onto YouTube, you can find the original promo for MasterChef, and it starts with very dramatic classical music, and it's basically waiters in leotards holding cloches, pirouetting across the stage, and they all pirouette towards this central stage, and there sitting on the central stage are the 3 judges, myself, George, and Gary, and we look really horrible. We look like Shakespearean villains. We look like we're going to disembowel the contestant there. So you can see that. That I think is what they thought it would be. That's the classic image of reality TV, is you have to have bad people. You have to have a villain. You have to have, that's where you get drama from. You get drama from being mean to people. You get tears from being mean to people. In the TV world, tears they're like crack cocaine to TV people. They love it. And we took the other attitude. None of us wanted to be the mean judge. So I think the moment when everything changes in that first season of MasterChef is Julie Goodwin cooked an amazing bit of lamb, and we all gave her a hug. And all the TV people went, you can't do that. You don't hug contestants. It looks like your favoritism. But they allowed it to play, and it kind of set the tone for the series, and that ran through and still runs today, this kind of idea that it's not about winning, it's about taking part. It's a celebration of food. It doesn't matter if it's bad, you can make it better. How do you make it better? All those really core MasterChef messages, I think, have resonated with people, and I love. And it was about this idea that cooking is an act of love. That when your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, your father, your uncle cooks for you, that time they take in feeding you is an act of love. And so therefore, you should never be, and someone's shown that love to you, should never be mean back. You can talk to them about how they can make things better. You can normally find the answer of what they do to make things better just by asking them. So the secret is to try and make it inclusive. I did a TV show after MasterChef, and the producer, very successful producer, came up and said, I can't believe what I've just done. I've made an episode of reality TV where I was crying because it was so moving and because it was so beautiful, and you hadn't been horrible to anyone. And it was like, well, that's what it can be. You know, food isn't I had an experience, sorry, I'll digress.
No, go on.
As I will do endlessly. I had an experience today where I'm sitting back at house and someone has made me a Malabari prawn curry. So she's got up this morning, she's gone to the garden, she's made Malabar prawn curry, and I say, why this dish? It's like a mini MasterChef moment. And she talks about being on a lake with her father and her mother and her family, and having Malabar, she's not from a Malabari background, and having this meal. And she's talking so beautifully about it. Myself, my friend, we're all sitting there, we've got tears in our eyes, she's got tears in her eyes. It's this amazing idea that food can move you at great times, because it is so central to who we are as human beings. So I wonder sometimes whether we underestimate the power of food, and that's not just good food. That's not the fancy restaurant food. That's the food that's the food of your soul.
How do you actually distinguish between, which was your job in a way, distinguishing between food that's made with love and passion and food that's really not very good? Because often love and passion are not enough.
Oh, no, love and passion. This is one of the worst cliches ever invented by food reality TV, is this idea, I made it with love. My grandmother loved me very, very much, but she was a terrible cook. When I was I learned to cook at her house because it was an act of self-defense. So it is, but it doesn't matter, because I still, when I wrote my first cookbook, there were more recipes from my grandmother who cooked really bad food than there were from my grandmother who cooked beautiful food. And I've still struggled, and I can only think that it's as a reflection of the times that I spent with her and that link. And I think, you know, we always talk about the 5, the 6 tastes, but memory, I think, is one of those. Memory is almost like another sense that it's so evocative. that you taste something. It's a moment in everyone's seen Ratatouille, you know, the animated film with the rat, and that moment when then the critic has their Ratatouille and he flashes back to being in short pants, and it's that moment. And I think, you know, have you had an experience like that? Have you had a moment where you tasted something and it's taking you back to a point in your time or a point in your life? Put your hands up if you've had that experience. See, it's kind of universal. It's crazy, but we don't really talk about home cooking in that way of how universal and how important it is. And I think that almost shows how universal and how important it is that we value food, and we should value food.
Well, there's a curious dichotomy in a sense in what you do, because when you were on MasterChef, I think we counted them yesterday, every single one of the world's great chefs came onto MasterChef. So you were dealing with very high quality professionals, with contestants who were often better than the professionals who went on to be professionals. And yet your parallel, extremely successful career is as a writer of cookbooks for home cooks.
Well, you know the secret of this, Veer, that no matter how much chefs love to talk about themselves, their books never sell as well as cookbooks. There's a reason why they're called cookbooks. They're written by cooks. They're not written by chefs. The earliest recipes ever written down are written on cruciform tablets. They're held at a university, I think Yale. They're 4 recipes. Effectively, the earliest ones were 3 recipes, 4,000 years ago. And there are these great recipes, one for a lamb stew with beetroot, one for a lamb soup. Also in that very close collection of cruciform carved tablets is a jester's tablet taking the mickey out of pretentious ways with food. And this is carved 4,000 years ago, and it says, take a goose egg, rest it on sand, serve it with a sauce of Epurean, which must be an area in Greece, an Epurean seaweed. And it's like, he's taking the mickey. So obviously at the point when we're writing down our first recipes, people are taking the mickey out of people who want to make food something more than something kind of highfalutin and fancy. So I've discovered that this morning at 5:30, which is I thought I'd share it.
And yet, despite these prehistoric criticisms, the ponciness continues, doesn't it?
There's always money in putting those tiny weeny herbs on things.
Yeah.
You know, that's an extra 300 rupee.
And a little foam, we still do that in India.
Oh, you still do a foam?
Yeah.
But also that's not, you know, we were talking about what are the things you love in food? What are the dishes? You know, great kachori, a lila mas. You know, these are the things that you try, and they have a cultural role, but they just make you feel happy. They make you feel good. And I think it's finding those things and acknowledging and championing those things, and that as our job as food writers is to hopefully introduce you to those experiences. I was lucky enough with MasterChef to have 11 years of introducing those experiences to contestants via people like Jutta Montelengi and Nigella Lawson and these great, very influential cookbook writers.
When you started writing about food, you did restaurant reviews as well, which is not a phase in your life you're particularly keen to talk about, or seems to have left a deep impression on you.
No, look, it was great. I did it for 10 years. I stopped when I started MasterChef. I'm still called a restaurant critic after 16 years.
Over your objections, you don't really like that.
I know, but only because I don't, I mean, I debate whether restaurant criticism exists anymore, because I think social media has democratized. You know, now your restaurant critics are writing 140 characters, or they're posting on Instagram, and you're following. If you're obsessed with Malabar cuisine, you're following those great Malabar cooks and talking about great Malabar restaurants. So you find your joy point from those people. So I'm not sure how relevant restaurant criticism is. Certainly doesn't have the same power in Australia. But also, I stopped doing it when half the people in the audience were still at school, or possibly even not born.
Yeah.
So it's a part of me, just like MasterChef's a part of me, but also there's other stuff going on as well.
But when you became a judge in MasterChef,